this week's cut.
All right, welcome everyone. I thought it would be fun to do a work in progress series for this podcast, and if you're on YouTube, that's definitely the best way to watch this one. There'll be video on all of it. First off, the design phase is something that I really enjoy. I'm going to talk over the video. There's really no noise in the video, so I'll just kind of narrate it here. First off, I like to start with a piece of paper and pencil. Always need erasers. If you're going to be designing a knife for a specific piece of steel, you need to make sure that you want to start with that size drawing. But I always start with a baseline. I want to keep everything straight and know where the bends are. So I start with that baseline. I then want to mark handle length and blade length. I want 4 to 4.5 inch handle. I have large hands, so I like a handle that fits. Then this is going to be a 4-inch blade, just a bushcraft knife, and it will fit on that piece of steel. So this is not the optimum way to design a knife. I don't like to put myself in a box and have to keep my knife design where my steel makes me. So I prefer to draw the knife up and then get the appropriate size steel for it. This is just going to be a freehand one, not the best way to do it. I have to redraw a lot of lines when I draw freehand. There's the mark for the finger choil, so I get that choil in there so that I know where to go, and then quickly draw a line. So you can see this is a really quick way to draw a knife, just a basic knife, and to me this one looks a little funky. That hump back on the back of the handle I don't like. The blade itself is too stubby, too short. You can change this angle here if you're going to be doing a skinner or something with a sharper point. I always like to draw where my scales should go so that I know where my plunge will be. Then I mark my pinholes, and I just do it freehand. It's better to do it eyeballing than measure. When you measure exactly center, it doesn't look right all the time. So that's where I'm saying I think the blade needs to be a bit longer so it doesn't look as stumpy. So I'm going to do another one here. I'm not worried about steel size, and you can see things different. And I'm also going to use some tools that help get the lines straight. So again, I draw a baseline, mark out my handle, mark out my blade length. I'm going to go a bit longer on this one, maybe 5.5 inches. I've got a thing called the French curl. You can get it in any art supply. That's what this thing is. I believe it's called the French curls, something like that. Anyway, it helps get, you can pretty much draw every angle, and you can already see it starting to look sleek. Depending on what kind of blade I want, I pick the curve for that cutting edge. So I'm going to take that right there, make it a little pointier, curve it around, take it down to the base. So there you can see already it's a very nice edge, not nearly as stubby as the first one I drew. Now I go to the spine on the handle. I mark that curve. I almost always do freehand just because it's an easy one. Now I'm going to go around, find the right angles to line up with that butt line and the spine, draw it around. So already looking pretty good, at least to my eye. So now we got to deal with the finger choil, which I struggle with. This is going to be a 2-part type handle. Find the right angles. And it takes a little practice to flip this thing around and see where your angles are going and what you want to use. I always use that portion right there for the finger choil. You want to get a nice slot for your finger to slide up into. I don't draw all the way around because it comes back on itself, so I usually stop right about there and then draw straight down. Looking pretty good, pretty sleek. May want to go a little wider next time on that point on the bottom where your fingers go. But otherwise, it looks pretty good. You can draw a recurve in if you want. This one's a little small for a recurve. I don't do too many recurves on a small blade, so that looks funky to me. So, what else? Looking pretty good. Now we'll draw my plunge line probably. I can't remember what I did in the video. Oh, I didn't want it to be a straight edge down on the bottom, so I'm going to curve up to the bottom there, so it comes up a little bit. Looking pretty good. There's my plunge line. Nice sweeping plunge, not horribly sweeping. Draw my scale in so I can get a good idea where I need to put my pin stock. I do 1/8 inch pinholes there just to keep some of the material in that narrow portion. I'll do a 1/4 inch there. I like to see what it's going to look like with a two-tone handle, so you draw a bolster in there. Another pin here. The gap between the bolster and that needs to be the same because it looks funky to me, so I just eyeball it. So I'm going to move this pin over and erase where I drew that one, so that looks a lot more balanced to me. I then like to do actual size holes also, just to keep the visual right. And as I said before, I don't measure because things look weird. The eyeball sees things different than a ruler does. So if you measure top to bottom and go dead center, a lot of times that looks really strange to me. So I don't do that anymore. I just freehand them where I want them. And I'm actually adjusting here. You can see I drop it a little lower than my actual point on that one, and I like it better there. This one I keep in the center. And then I'm also going to do a lanyard tube. I don't always put lanyard tubes in there, but I always put the holes there, so that if someone decides they want a lanyard tube, the hole's already there. I don't have to worry about re-drilling it or anything, especially if they tell me, oh, I do want a lanyard after heat treat. That makes things a lot worse. And I'll actually do one on the top of the spine as well. You'll see that here a little later. I then want to darken the lines in more so you guys can see them, and I think this pen's out of ink, so I find the angle I used, and then once I've got the pencil lines where I want them, I take a permanent marker and draw them. But you can see this pen's kind of out of ink, so it should have gone in the garbage just then. I'll probably pick this up and use it again a million times before I decide to throw it in the garbage. But anyway, looking for another pen. And putting those lines in permanently. Small Sharpie works better, but this is all I had while I was recording this, so I just use a pen. My favorite pens, by the way, Jetstream, Click pens, Fine Point, awesome pens. If you're a pen nerd and you want a cheap, really good pen, that's the one you should go get. I think my battery goes dead here as well on the camera, so I have to take it in another shot. Somewhere here it doesn't. Yeah. All right. Just getting those lines in a little better. This is a tool I use quite a bit, just a bunch of different sized holes. I'm going to just draw in my weight reduction holes. This is kind of a two-part purpose. It reduces weight in the handle, so you get a better balance. It also creates a better glue bond or epoxy bond, because you've got those through holes that epoxy can reach through and grab both scales. I don't want to remove too much material. So I'll go to a smaller hole on that. And I just kind of look to see where there's enough space for holes without losing too much material for handle strength. Once you get those scales glued up, you add a lot more strength. I also will do one in the middle here. Getting the weight out of the very back or the butt of the knife creates really good balance. So I try to get as much weight out of that handle butt as possible. So those are my reduction holes. Looking pretty good. Then what I'll do once I have this design drawn up is I'll make a photocopy of it so that I have a copy of it, and then I'll cut it out of this paper. So those are 1/8 inch holes. Those are 1/4 inch holes. That's also a 1/4 inch hole, and that's a 1/4 inch hole. And then I'll oversize them with an F bit so that the pin stock will slide through easily, but that's just so I know what size those holes are. So then I'll photocopy this for a permanent record in case I need to redo it and I lose a pattern. So once I've photocopied it to actual size, I will then cut it out with scissors. And I will, if I'm only going to make 1 or 2 of these, I will just use this paper pattern, lay it over the steel, and do it that way. If it's a model that I end up making a lot of or people are asking for, I will then take that pattern and transfer it over to a thin stainless steel, or actually basically it's just a sheet metal pattern that I'll use from then on. Much easier to trace with a steel pattern. Those paper edges don't roll like the paper does. So get that profile cut out. There's your design. Looks pretty good. Would probably work in the kitchen pretty well. That butt end comes down a little far to be a good chopping or rocking knife. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is part 1 of our work in progress. The next step will be transferring that over onto the steel and drilling the holes and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned. We'll get part 2 up as soon as I get a minute. Thanks.